welcome to the debate. Most people, when they look at the global economy, they see, interest rates, stock tickers, trade deals. They see the visible world. But today we're going to peel back the floorboards. We're looking at a shadow economy that runs completely parallel to the one we all live in, a world where these ghost companies, anonymous oligarchs, and criminal networks aren't just exploiting loopholes. They are actively seizing control of the future. We're talking about the silent billionaire game. And this isn't just about tax evasion. We are talking about the coin laundry of crypto, the secret killing machines of authoritarian regimes, and, well, invisible capital that moves faster than any law can possibly catch.
It is a dramatic picture, I'll give you that. But I think you're starting from a flawed premise. You're treating this shadow economy like it's some sort of alien invasion, this parasitic force attacking us from the outside. But when you actually read the reports, from the IMF's deep dives to the trade investigations, you see something much more uncomfortable. This shadow world is a structural feature of our own making. It's enabled by Western institutions, it's fueled by legitimate industries like big oil and luxury markets, and frankly, it's a symptom of how we've just completely broken the definition of value itself.
See, that sounds to me like a very sophisticated way of diffusing responsibility. But I represent the view that this is a hostile takeover, not some glitch in the software. When we look at the source material, specifically the ICIJ investigations into the Damasco dossier and China targets, we are not seeing economic inefficiency. We are witnessing the weaponization of the financial system against human rights and, well, against democracy itself. My argument is simple. These ghost companies are rogue actors, criminals, authoritarians, and they require an aggressive global crackdown before they completely corner the market on the future.
And I'm telling you, you can't simply arrest your way out of a problem that you're helping to fund. If you follow the money, whether it's to the Caspian cabals or Deforestation Inc., you find that the call is coming from inside the house. The legitimate economy is the one paying the ghosts. So the issue isn't just policing the shadows. It's that our entire international monetary system, which is described in the IMF's recent work on the dollar game, it creates the very demand for these secretive flows. You want to hunt the sharks. I'm saying we need to drain the swamp we built for them.
Okay, let's get specific, because I think it's easy to hide behind economic theory and forget the actual blood on the floor. I want to talk about the Damascus dossier.
Go ahead.
This is not just a spreadsheet of bad transactions. This is one of the most harrowing leaks in history. We are talking about tens of thousands of secret photos and intelligence files exposing the Assad regime's industrial-scale killing machine. And investigations that were released late last year, in 2025, they show this is ongoing. Now, you might ask, what does this have to do with the economy? Everything, because a torture program and a war machine cannot function on a shoestring budget.
No regime operates for free. No.
Exactly. It requires a massive, sophisticated financial lifeline. It requires a network of ghost companies to move money, to buy loyalty, to import weapons, and to hide assets from sanctions. This is the silent billionaire game in its most lethal form. These aren't just rich people hiding assets from the taxman. These are entities financing mass atrocities. They are the engine of the killing machine.
I don't dispute the horror of the Damascus dossier. It is undeniable proof of brutality. However, you're focusing on the very end of the supply chain rather than the beginning. You look at the ghost company moving the cash and you call them the villain. I want to know where that cash originated. Look at Deforestation Inc. or the Caspian cabals. The investigations show us that Western oil companies bet massive amounts of capital on Kazakhstan, completely turning a blind eye to corruption risks. They didn't just stumble into this, they integrated with these regimes.
But that doesn't absolve the regime.
Hold on, let's look at the mechanics of Deforestation Inc. specifically. The investigation revealed that a Dutch yacht maker, a company building a $500 million super yacht for Jeff Bezos, the absolute pinnacle of Western luxury, was fined for using Myanmar teak. That teak was harvested by a brutal military junta. The money flowed from a Western luxury giant into the hands of a regime, and it was laundered through these shadow companies to make the wood look legal. So when you say it's a hostile takeover by criminals, I say it's a supply chain problem. The Western economy demands the teak, the oil, the cheap resources. The ghost companies are just the logistics providers for our own appetites.
I see the complicity argument, and it's valid to a point,
but it completely ignores the technological acceleration we're seeing now. The West might have started the fire, sure, but technology is pouring gasoline on it. We have to talk about the machinery that makes this silence possible. I'm talking about the coin laundry. The ICIJ's investigation into how the crypto boom minted a shadow economy is frankly terrifying. We aren't just talking about a few bad transfers. We are talking about a system designed to bypass the rule of law entirely.
Crypto is a tool. Like cash, it can be used for good or for ill.
It is so much more than a tool, it's an evasion ecosystem. Look at the specific evidence, the stuff regarding Bitpanda's German subsidiary. Auditors flagged severe information security issues there that echoed precisely what regulators were worried about. I mean, basic failures in knowing who the customer is. But here is where it gets truly dangerous. At the exact same time, this was February 2026, the United States government slashed the budget for the IRS office that's meant to examine dirty money safeguards in cryptocurrency exchanges.
That was a very controversial move.
It was a surrender. On one hand, you have the rise of these digital washing machines capable of moving billions in seconds. And on the other, you have the deliberate dismantling of the police force meant to stop them. This allows the silent billionaires to move capital instantly, anonymously, and without any regard for borders or sanctions. They don't need a Dutch yacht maker to legitimize them anymore. They have their own parallel financial rails.
That is a compelling narrative, but I would frame it differently. You see the coin laundry purely as a criminal enterprise. I look at the IMF's September 2025 report on the stablecoin paradox, and I see a market failure. The report argues that stablecoins and crypto are, well, they're filling a void in the international monetary system. Why do people use them? Because the traditional banking system, the light economy, is slow, expensive, and it's exclusionary.
So we should just accept money laundering because wire transfers are annoying. Is that the argument?
We should understand the incentive structure. The IMF noted in December 2025 that even central bankers are now tapping into non-traditional data because their old metrics are failing to capture the real economy. The shadow exists because the light is broken. I mean, if you have a system where a legitimate cross-border payment takes 3 days and costs 5%, and a crypto transfer takes 3 seconds and costs pennies, the market, black or white, is going to move to the efficient option. The silent billionaires are just exploiting an inefficiency that we refuse to fix.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because it implies this is all just about transaction speeds. It's about power. It's about authoritarian conflicts. Let's look at how ghost companies are used as geopolitical weapons. Take the Swazi secrets investigation. We're looking at Eswatini, Africa's last absolute monarchy. The leak exposes how suspicious money flows exploit proximity to the king. This isn't about market efficiency, this is about looting an entire country. Or look at Cyprus Confidential.
A classic example of regulatory arbitrage.
It's worse than that. It exposed a sprawling financial industry that powered the Putin regime. And what did they do with that power? They secretly acquired Western technology to protect their nuclear submarine fleet. This was reported in October 2025. This is exactly what I mean by the silent billionaire game. It's not just about getting rich, it's about buying the capability to threaten the world order. They used Cyprus, a European nation, as a backdoor to steal tech that undermines Western security. That is not a market failure, that is an act of aggression.
I admit the nuclear submarine acquisition is a compelling argument for the security threat. But let's look at the Caspian cabals again. You mentioned Putin dominating neighbors. Well, the investigation shows that Western oil companies ended up at the mercy of Vladimir Putin because they had entangled themselves so deeply with corrupt elites in Kazakhstan. They thought they could play the game, pay the bribes, use the ghost companies to smooth the deals, and just walk away with the profits. And instead, they got burned. Instead, they handed leverage to an authoritarian state. They made themselves hostages. And this just proves my point. The silent billionaires in these regimes didn't force Western oil majors to invest. The oil majors went in willingly, blinded by greed. And regarding shadow diplomats, these rogue honorary consuls, terror financiers undermining diplomacy, who appoints them? Often, they are accepted by Western governments who don't do their due diligence because they want the trade deals.
The silent billionaire is often a guest of honor at this embassy cocktail party.
That brings us to the future, and this is where I get truly worried. We are moving into an era defined by AI and resource scarcity. The silent game is shifting from oil and teak to data and chips. The IMF's December 2025 report, Inside the AI-Led Resource Race, lays it out perfectly. The demand for energy, chips, and minerals will determine who dominates the next century.
It is the new industrial revolution. Absolutely.
Precisely. And my fear is that the same ghost companies that laundered money for Assad and bought teak from the Myanmar junta are now cornering the market on the resources needed for AI. Look at China targets. This investigation details how Beijing abuses international institutions to terrorize critics worldwide. They're using transnational repression, literally hunting people down across borders. Now combine that political will with the financial opacity of the coin laundry. You have a recipe for a future where the critical infrastructure of the global economy, the minerals for our chips, the data for our models, is owned by entities that don't officially exist.
That is a terrifying prospect, I agree. But fighting ghosts with sanctions hasn't worked. We've been sanctioning these regimes for decades, and yet, as Cyprus Confidential showed, the money still flows. I believe we need a structural solution. The IMF's report, The Hidden Price of Data, argues that we need to turn passive users into active suppliers who demand fair value for their data.
How does getting paid for my data stop a dictator from buying nuclear secrets?
Because it changes the power dynamic. Right now, we have what UNCTAD calls tech's winner-take-all trap. A few massive monopolies control all the data and the infrastructure, and these monopolies are often pretty opaque themselves. If we modernize measures of growth, as the IMF suggests, and regulate data access so that value is distributed, we reduce the concentration of power that allows these silent billionaires to operate. You can't operate a shadow monopoly if the data infrastructure is transparent and, well, democratized.
I think that's wishful thinking. You want to change the accounting rules while the house is on fire. I mean, while you're modernizing measures of growth, the predator spyware firm Intellexa, which by the way was resurgent after U.S. sanctions, is selling tools to hack journalists and dissidents. This was in the August 2025 reporting. These companies are agile. They shift jurisdictions, they change names, they're ghosts. You cannot regulate them into submission with better data policies alone. You need to dismantle the networks.
But you can't dismantle a network that runs on the global reserve currency without addressing the currency itself. Kenneth Rogoff in The Dollar Game talks about the moves that made the dollar king and those that could topple it. The reason these ghost companies use the dollar, and by extension the Western financial system, is because it's the only game in town. But that hegemony is what allows them to hide. If we had a more multipolar, transparent monetary system, perhaps a digital euro, as Philip Lane discussed, or regulated stablecoins, we could illuminate the transactions.
Or we create more dark corners. The stablecoin paradox itself warns that these technologies could concentrate financial power even further. If we legitimize these shadow flows by integrating them into a digital euro or some recognized stablecoin system, aren't we just laundering their reputation along with their money?
Not if we embrace what the IMF calls instilling trust through statistics. Independent national statistical agencies need to safeguard data integrity. It sounds boring, I know. It's not as dramatic as a Damascus dossier photo. But if you have accurate, real-time data on economic flows, nowcasting as they call it, you can spot the anomalies. You can see the shadow economy, not by looking for the criminals, but by seeing where the numbers just don't add up in the real economy.
Data helps us see. I agree with that. Gita Bhatt wrote that data needs to help us see our world more clearly. But seeing isn't stopping. We saw the photos from Syria. We saw the deforestation in Indonesia. We saw the corruption in Kazakhstan. The problem wasn't a lack of data. The problem was a lack of will to act against the silent billionaires because, frankly, they are too profitable.
That's a cynical but perhaps accurate take. But I would argue that Deforestation Inc. showed that when the data was connected to the consumer, when the yacht owner was linked to the Myanmar teak, there were consequences. Fines were levied, reputations were damaged. The shadow diplomats' investigation led to Jordan, Latvia, and Israel shaking up their diplomatic corps. So sunlight does work, but it has to shine on the buyers, not just the sellers.
It's a game of whack-a-mole, though. You stop the teak, they move to palm oil. You stop the oil, they move to cobalts for AI chips. My concern is that the China targets investigation shows a level of sophistication and transnational repression that goes beyond just commerce. They are silencing dissenters, they are exporting their authoritarian model, and they are doing it using the very financial tools we are discussing. If we don't treat this as a security crisis, if we keep treating it as a trade compliance issue, we are going to lose the future.
And I worry that if we treat it purely as a security crisis, we play right into the us versus them narrative that fuels these regimes. If we shut down financial access without fixing the underlying dollar game, we just push them further into the dark, into alternative crypto systems where we have zero visibility. We need to bring them into the light, not force them deeper underground.
We're running out of time, so let's try to bring this to a head. You believe the solution lies in fixing the Western financial architecture to remove the incentives for secrecy.
Essentially, yes. The silent billionaire game is a symptom. As long as we have a winner-take-all tech landscape and Western complicity in things like the Caspian cabals, the shadows will remain. We can't just blame the ghosts for haunting a house that we built with secret passages. We need to look at the dollar game and how we value data. If we change the incentives, the ghosts starve.
And I just fundamentally disagree on the urgency. While complicity exists, the immediate danger is the killing machine revealed in the Damascus dossier and the impunity of the coin laundry. We cannot wait for structural reform or a new digital euro while ghost companies are dismantling democracy today. These are hostile actors weaponizing our economy. We need to cut their lines of credit, arrest their enablers, and aggressively police the boundaries of the legitimate economy.
I suppose we both agree on one thing, referencing Jita Bahat again. The data helps us see the world more clearly. We just disagree on what that clarity demands of us.
Indeed. Whether we rebuild the light or hunt the shadows, the first step is acknowledging that the silent billionaire is playing a game with our future. And right now, they're winning.
That is a sobering thought.
Thank you for listening to The Debate.